subject we were talking about when you left?
Was on the way to the sand place.
Oh, yes, it got to be quite an epic, because Ted was going down with his sidecar outfit with a Vauxhall 25 and trailer, which had originally we'd owned between us. So when Manning made his demands, I just told him, hey, I have news for you. I paid for that, and the machine is not going on there. And his attitude was, you work here for us. I said, well, that doesn't intrude in my private life. So you go find yourself some other way of getting the machine down. So he changed his tactic, he came back, he said, would you write it down? So I agreed to write it down for him, because it was be a fun thing to do, so sitting in that cramped cab. So because of the insurance required on it, I had to wear my race crash helmet, which if you remember in England in those days was not done. To wear a crash helmet on the road, other than as an official road tester, would have been considered ostentatious.
Yep.
So I agreed to do that. Wore my helmet, rode it down, and you had to run that thing in second gear, stay behind that 840 pickup.
I'm sure.
So I followed Danny, and then occasionally to sort of clear the cobwebs out a little bit, I just signaled Danny and then give it full stick down the road. And instead of sitting and waiting for him, it would take so long for him to catch up, I'd turn around and go in the opposite direction. And then turn around again and catch up with him again. And one of these occasions, we were just getting on the Oxford bypass, which at the time you were there,
I know exactly where that is.
that was one of the few straight roads we had.
Close to Kirby's, huh? Was
Yes.
it Kirby's on there?
Yeah.
Okay. About that.
So anyway, we came down. I was just sitting behind, just ticking over in second gear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, love.
And a guy came back up, passed on a new swinging arm ES2 Norton. I had the ES2 a Model 18, and had a pillion rider on. We know they're not a sledgehammer machine; they run forever, but they're not very fast. So he came by, and the sign that was popular then was not the modern throw a finger, it was like that, which was ridiculous to what was actually a road lightning. And so I didn't have goggles on, I just had sunglasses on, but I had a helmet on. So I ignored him. So he put a little further forward, pulled up, saw the racing bike on the back of the pickup, and came alongside Danny's cab and started doing the same to Danny. So Danny leaned out the window, and so I dropped it down to bottom gear, which was the only one you could use at those speeds, and just squirted a little and shut it off again. So he took the bait and went roaring off down the Oxford bypass. But what would the maximum speed be on that?
About 85.
Would he do that much?
Yeah, about 85.
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't do that much. So
About more like 80 to
probably, and sitting upright. So he went down the bypass as hard as he could go. So I waited a short while to let him get well down the bypass, and he just squirted it in bottom and up through the gears. And there's a giant roundabout halfway down. So I passed him before we got to the roundabout, and I couldn't look round because I had just had sunglasses on. I looked down, it was in on the big, it had a shadow chronometric speedometer. It was indicating 120, which is pretty good. And just went by him probably closer than I should have done, and almost blew them off the road, it was, in a literal sense. Then down through the gears, and it was set up like a road shadow with the two prop stands and a magneto cowling. So went round, down through the gears, brake, round the traffic island or roundabout. Just the other side there was a grass lawn or greensward. Braked quite hard, stopped the engine, kicked the stand underneath, flipped my helmet and lay back on the grass in a second or two, you know. And these guys come popping by on this Norton, both staring at me on the grass. I'll never forget that. So we pressed on to Aberdare Park, that's in Glamorganshire in South Wales. We went two short directions to the hotel, And we stopped, and a policeman, a Welsh bobby, got on the running board. They had running boards down to there. And as we were driving into the hotel, he was there. We were behind him. The radiator hose burst. And you know the louvers in the covers, because they didn't have a hood in those days. You used to lift the engine covers from the side. All the hot, greasy water came out of those all over. We go to the hotel. Someone, I can't remember who, hurt an ankle. And Ted's wife Anne was looking after him. The staff all had a mysterious illness in the hotel. She wound up doing the cooking in the place for us. Then I had that accident in the race and broke my collarbone. So I went to the Mountain Ash Hospital in Glamorgan and got it all strapped up, you know, and pulled out where the two ends it over in the bone. And it was just like one big hospital ward in there with Anne looking after me. So I didn't go to Pendine. My bike was wrecked. And obviously I couldn't ride with a broken collarbone, so I went back with them in the Vauxhall 25. So it was an absolutely disastrous trip for just about everyone. And I didn't get to race Danny's twin either at Aberdeen Park or at Pendine.
It's strange how opportunities arise. When I was in Bonneville, I got a buddy that's got a Kawasaki that runs 175, 180 all the time. Turbocharged. It was a Suzuki. I think it was a Suzuki. Anyway, so he says, "Can you have a ride on it?" He said, "Okay," I said, "I'll do that." So I went ahead and made my run to come back. And he came in and said, "Well, can't have your ride." He said, "I blew it up."
That's the way to go.
Yeah, I've never ridden anything that fast. He said, "Oh, yeah, you made that fast. It's just early on to hang out."
Have you heard anything of Murray Walker in recent years?
Not recently.
I guess it's easy to be disappointed in someone like that because he wasn't as great as his father.
Well, I mean, many times that's the case.
We shouldn't expect him to, yeah.
You know, you got to, can't help but compare people, but you got to be lenient because you can't all be Dukes and Halewoods.
Now, Ralph Renson told me that the reason that old man Harewood agreed to take Chadwick over to put Elizabeth in South Africa, well, it mentions it here actually, pupil, headmaster and teacher Mike Harewood and Dave Chadwick, the team manager Stan Harewood.
Yeah, so that he could teach the kid the riding tricks.
Yeah. And Chadwick was capable of doing that.
Well,
he says here, following him around the circuits and studying his cornering lines and riding tactics, I could have picked up by myself in a couple of seasons.
he saved a couple of seasons by doing that.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm sure of it. Now, I told you about Hale telling me that the clutch was down in Silverstone.
No?
He's wailing around there on that twin Desmo Ducati. He come in the pits and said, "Hey, Sonny," says, "your clutch was slipping inside here." It went out faster. And I went and checked it, and sure enough, all the free play was gone out the cable. I didn't hear it because everything else was making so much racket.
Yeah.
Pretty strange. Yeah, it was 100% reliable. Yeah.
Rhiannon's awake.
Okay. Thank you.
Seized every time I ran it.
I think you made a mistake there. And
I'm sure that I did.
I sure made plenty, so
hindsight's,
join the club.
You know, the idea of it was fine. I had an agreement that they would supply me with 2 racing machines and 1 road machine. And I would transport them over there and run them and take care of them and bring them back. When the time came, and a suitable array of spare parts, you know, like a great God Almighty box full of pistons and rings and gaskets. Because, you know, I knew that in 2 strokes, 8 pistons like popcorn. And I told them that. That's what it would take to make it a reasonable effort. Well, they said they'd do that, but they didn't do that. when the time came, one machine came, and it was set up like a scrambler. I mean, absolutely put pegs on it. We're about that wide. It was a scrambler is what it was.
At that time, the Japanese literally had no idea.
No idea, not a clue. Well, fortunately, I had bought the road machine, and I built the rear sets and all the stuff for it ahead of time. And was out running it, you know, getting used to the idea. And then I was going to transfer that stuff onto the street bike they were supposed to give me. They never did that. They didn't do that. So anyway, I transferred all my stuff off of my street bike onto the racer. And the other bike never did come. It never did come until I was leaving. So I had my brother ship that on for a spare. And then the spare parts was a little, you know, like a shoebox full of stuff. There wasn't enough. Well, we didn't eat them pistons up too sweet, you know, that just eat them right up. But the idea, the thing was fast. It was about 116 miles an hour, which was a competitive speed for 250, I feel. The best it ever pulled was 8,400 turns on the highest gear, I think about 675 gear, which was about 116 miles an hour. And I feel that would have been competitive. I only got 3 laps. And not 3 full laps. It broke on the 3rd lap before it did. So I only got 2 full laps. And my 2nd lap was 5 minutes faster than my 1st lap. And it was within qualifying time for the 2nd lap. And oh, the only way I even had any idea, you know, they had no timing thing out there or anything, so I had no idea what the speed was. I didn't even the tack reading about what it was doing for speed. So I was bitching about that. There was a guy named Trevor Pound in Australia.
Australian. He was an amethyst, right?
Yeah. Well, he said, well, I was bitching because I had no idea how, no yardstick to know how it was doing in comparison to anything else. And he said, well, yeah. He said, it's doing fine, because he said, I had to follow you about 3 miles before I could get my 350 max spot. He said, I can see that yellow and red thing, and I think that's how long it took to under by. So I thought, well, I'm tough enough. I felt much better knowing that. Also, being able to follow those guys on bigger machines helped a tremendous amount, like him having a kid there at Chadwick to tutoring. I picked up on them and would stay as long as I could with each one that passed me, and that helped a lot. Like particularly going through the hole wall. Oh, I mean, no way you know, on the first lap I went through there, dead slow, you know, stopping, and where'd the road go? And the 2nd lap, while I was on the back of a 7R or a G50, right through there leveling.
Took me 2nd lap, 2nd year, second day, 2nd lap in my 2nd year before I got through Bagaro full on, I was on Northern. It takes a bit of doing. Right down in the gutter after the 12th milestone, right down, very, very late peel off. And then with the power and speed that were available then, it was just about 4 minutes. But that's where Des Wolf from Southern Rhodesia tried to do it before he learned how to do it. He took one of those poplar trees out on the way up the hill there, neither of which survived. The Garrett is very difficult. It was one of the more difficult bends on the circuit, I'd say, to do. Very important too, because the quality of your work at Bagaro determines your speed all the way up to the 13th milestone of that hill. If you do it for football, you go by lesser riders like a rocket up there, even where the actual machine power is probably not a great deal different.
Well, there's no doubt that what knowledge makes a lot of difference. If you know where the road goes, and you can hold it full on, When the other guy's shutting it back, but it's going to make a lot of difference. That's all there is to it.
That's why I've been very, very disappointed in some of the modern riders like Kenny Roberts. I would like to have seen them. I think the island is a measurement, and I believe we've made a mistake in racing. We've gone down some wrong avenues. But we need to get the capacity down and have a mix of circuits, probably more events in Formula One. The old Nürburgring, not that silly little circuit they've got now, but the old genuine Nürburgring, the Isle of Man at one end, and the Ulster Grand Prix, genuine road circuits, the artificial road, quote, road circuits, unquote, like Spa, Malmedy-Francorchamps for Belgium, circuits like, which you've seen, I've not seen, like Zandvoort, and then a couple of the other extreme end, like Monza, maybe even Monterey, or the Ebersrennen. Let's put them both in, both types. But instead now they've got a road racing series, as I understand it, which is not very well patronised by the trade, and therefore has gone into a decline. And we've got the Super Bowl, which don't interest me too much.
That I can't understand people, but they like that. They like that.
Well, I'm not sure that they do. I think that if you analyse the trends, you find that to some extent the tail is wagging the dog. The Japanese wanted publicity out. And publicity meant riding it across a tightrope between the Empire State Building and the Pan Am Building in New York City. That's what they do. The top line riders of the day were largely to blame. And it started with people, some of whom I disliked quite a bit, like Reed. Now, I will not deny that Reed had sheer competence. I don't think he was in the same class as the Duke or Surtees. But at the time, given good machinery, he did very well and became a world champion. But had there been any of the top line riders properly equipped, he would not have been a world champion. He was nonetheless a good rider. But Reed and then people who came along after him hit the period when a lot of money came into motorcycle racing, from the cigarette companies, some of the early folk, who transformed the sport. Those guys really didn't like road racing. They were a variety of Brands Hatch road scratchers. Now you take a man like Derek Minter, that's how Minter started. But that was not Minter's sole ability. Minter could be either thing. I think if Minter had been better funded, like in this day and age, Minter would have been at least as good as a Kenny Roberts or any of these other.
I've got some beautiful pictures I took at Silverstone.
I would say that in sheer talent, the Minter was probably a better rider than Surtees. I didn't too much like him in terms of his personality, but I think he was a much better rider.
I didn't talk to Minter much. He was easier to get on with than Bob Mack.
The funny thing is, I'm kind of sad to hear you say that, because Bob Mack was a very special case.
Yeah, but he was very quiet.
Exactly.
He was a very quiet
So
person.
withdrawn, so, you know, he was accused of being a dour Scot. I think he was simply an extremely shy Scot. And any time I've ever talked to Bob Mack, it's been for advice and help. He was always forthcoming. And he wouldn't say very much, but he gave you a decent answer, and it was always helpful. Alistair King was a little bit more outgoing than Mack was. Well, I had some brief contact with him in the paddock from time to time, but in fact I was talking to Bob Mack just before he was killed at Dalton, and he went out and he lost his, you know, the one-piece oversuits made in that Barber material for going over race leathers. He was putting those on, and they had a belt. He lost his belt, so we had a little bit of a laugh and a tease while he found a piece of clothesline and cut it off and tied it in a knot. And he went out, and the strange thing is he came down at Druids at Alton, not Druids at Brands, and that was the very place that he told me how to ride. I could never get Druids right. I always made a hash of it coming out of Clay Hill. And following him, losing ground of course to him, is the thing that educated me in exactly how to handle that. It's really a series of two bends before the short straight leads to the large corner. And it's kind of ironic that that's the place that he should be killed. But he was in the wet, and there were a lot of loose leaves around, and I mean, he didn't. He just straight into a tree. Didn't give him a lot of choice. Mentor was extremely good. I would like to see the if you want to call it Formula One or Grand Prix, whatever type you give it. I'd like to see in both motorcycles and cars a change in the rules over a period of time to give the manufacturers and the riders a chance to accommodate. I'd like to see them bring it nearer to a relationship to road machines.
Yeah, well, that's exactly my point, is that when they have, you know, 3, 4, 6s, 8s, or 7s in their two-strokes, and they're totally different than the production machine, I think that's erroneous. I think that they need to get back to a more production-based machine, because the production things are damn fine now. That you can buy a new motorcycle and run 120 to 160 miles an hour around the box. You know, things that you'd have to work on like hell to get to go that fast at all, let alone just break it out and do it. They definitely have made a tremendous amount of progress.
If I took over as dictator of the FIM tomorrow, the first thing I would do would be to announce that this was the future plan and set some dates. And I would set the series to give a reasonable international character to it, which would not exclude countries that didn't necessarily produce a racing machine. Try and bring in some Iron Curtain countries, particularly Yugoslavia and East Germany, who supported racing in the past. And I don't know what the circuit is like, but the Yugoslavs have a circuit in a patio. The East Germans have the old Sachsen ring. I would, I guess, bring pressure to bear to try and make sure that we use the old Nürburgring, not the new one. I think the new one is a waste of time. That could be Brands Hatch, which isn't even Brands Hatch. I would try and get a fair number. I think one of the things they need to do is, rather than pay a lot more money, is make it easier. I think that the nations themselves could make it easier, for example, for border crossing with race equipment. I think they could probably do things to help in terms of transportation so that they had a better infusion of younger upcoming riders. Now it's getting to the stage where if it's not a works team or heavy sponsorship, can't afford to get a machine, let alone to take it anyway. I would take the maximum, a senior class would not be above 350, if even that, with the amount of horsepower they've learned to develop. By going to road circuits, the basic design of the machine would have to be able to accommodate necessary handling qualities of a place like the Nürburgring or the Isle of Man or Andrade. Meanwhile, then having to compete at Monza or in the intermediate sort of circuits like the Belgium, which I think lie between the two approximately. Was that a reasonable statement?
Belgium
it's very fast. It's not a bowl like Monza.
Monza's more a fake thing, and that's more a road course.
Yeah, that's nearer, but it isn't a road course to the degree that the Andrade is.
No, that there's it's a very high-speed road course, and they've eased all the bends and all that.
I think there's room for one or two of them in the calendar.
The track I would like to have seen up there is the French circuit.
Clermont-Ferrand? I've never been there.
I think that would be a very interesting course to watch.
Yeah. I think the worst course from a spectator's point of view is Silverstone. It's like an inverted saucer.
Yes.
You can't see anything except.
You guys want to eat in your own trays?
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Okay, because your things still want
Okay. I would not place any artificial restrictions at this stage on whether it would be a two-stroke or a four-stroke. But if there's any form of forced induction, then I would take the same approach that the car people have taken and formularize it, so that if you have the benefit of forced induction, then you must accept a lower sweat volume. load displacement vehicle.
Well, they did that for a long time in cars.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it worked quite well.
Well, yeah, I think the idea is you don't want to limit, you do not want to stillify progress. So there's got to be some room for improving the breed. But the same token, they're getting the machinery now so fast that they don't need so many CCs to do the job. I've got to a point where I prefer about a 650 to 750 machine lightweight.
The road.
For anything, you know, because it has ample torque and power, and it's light and nimble and fun to ride. And it's not quite as heavy-handed or as heavy. And it works quite well. Now, I'm not to say if I took real long trips, then maybe I'd want 1,000 or something.
Doesn't it depend to a degree on what kind of road you're riding?
Yeah, sure. But give and take, generally, long trips generally entail some long
Freeway.
more or less freeway, pretty straight, long going, and that's very obnoxious on a little bike. Instead of waiting and waiting and waiting in the dirt bike, like you hustle along, it's not working hard. So I'm not certain of that. As a matter of fact, I'd have to take a trip on the two types to make up my mind.
I would think there's a pretty reasonable compromise in that direction in something like the Ducati. You can swing through the bends in the mountains with it.
Well, I was thinking of that very thing, that 650. The Jeep was a very, very nice,
Thank you very much.
a
That
very,
looks
very
good.
nice compromise.
Here's this pepper. Do you want salt and pepper?
Thank you.
Not at all.
What do you need?
Nothing except what it is.
I always remember when we got to England, the very first day, Southampton, we went to this truck stop, and the guy told Rebel says, I can't stand them raw eggs. He says, could you scramble them? He says, you mean you want them mucked about a bit, mate? And he says, yeah. He says, well, you can't have them. You'll have them brought in proper British style or you won't have them.
I wish I'd been there.
I'll make some fresh coffee.
Great. Well,
I'm down if I'd eat
I
an egg
can't,
that isn't set.
I can't remember what the hell he did. I think he said he had to shut his eyes or something. Or maybe he elected not to have it. I don't really know.
You and I went several times to Jack's Hill, do you remember?
This only controls the pipe.
You know, it doesn't exist now?
There's a stainless steel.
That couldn't stop
No.
between Waldock and Stevenage
That's right. What there is,
on the west side of the road.
yes, correct.
So,
Well, there's
so he said, oh, no.
nightclub of some kind there now.
Well, what was the name of the road that went right past George Brown's place? And you bore to the left.
Orchard Road and Station Road.
It went to Bickleford, it went to some other town.
You mean past George Brown's shop?
Yeah. It went out, not up the North Road, but the fourth to the left.
Well,
That went to a little...
went over to Hitchin.
Hitchin, yeah.
Yeah.
Hitchin.
I have a job to find my way around there now because they've altered all those roads and linked them with a bypass. And they really need to study a local map for a while to work out. If you went there for the first time, you'd have no problem. The problem is you try to relate it
To what it used to be.
what it used to be. In fact, I came away with a dreadful case of Rip Van Winkle syndrome.
You don't use this, do you?
No,
The meat's healthy enough, right?
exactly.
Would you like a little marmalade or something?
Nothing's.
You sure?
This is just perfect.
Okay.
The English muffin's nice and crisp.
You got any orange marmalade?
No. I just said that he's gonna get, I've got some peach and pineapple. That's very good.
That'd be good.
And some strawberry.
The boys were astounded at the size of the English breakfast. They couldn't face them. I put on a hell of a lot of weight. You know, and I wasn't going to mess it. I hadn't had that kind of thing. The English bacon is good, isn't it? I'll tell you where they specialise in a lot of fried food. It's over in Belfast, in Northern Ireland. They eat an enormous amount of fried stuff, and they have a lot of instant breads, particularly soda bread. That fried soda bread is very nice. Of course, dietically it's very bad.
Mama, don't do that. She's fatting like a Saint Bernard.
Well, I used to, you know, before we could unload the bikes off the boats,
I don't like her to
we
do
used to go and grab breakfast from one of those little dockside places. Very inexpensive and a huge amount of food. But it was all fried. It was a cholesterol special.
Happy as he lets him do what he wants to do. As long as the other half goes along with it, yeah.
The ordinary dock workers in Belfast were solidly against, in favour of racing. Very, very interesting. Even the unions. So that the racing people were kind of sacrosanct. And the Royal Ulster Constabulary was the same. Someone used to look after Ralph's bike for him and clean it after a race. But their idol was R.D. Bell.
I met him.
He had changed quite a bit after his bad accident.
I'm sure he did. He and Terry Hill. Let's see.
I know who else you probably saw. You went over to Belfast, didn't you?
Right?
You talked to Bakers. You probably met Jackie Chambers.
No. I think you told me about him, but I don't think I met him.
Jackie Chambers was sort of patron of the art of motorcycle racing.
I looked up Tommy Robb and R.D. Bell, Terry Hill. That was about it. I only was there 2 days. And of course I stayed at Matthews. He had a couple of daughters.
Matthews do for them.
He had a little school motorcycle agency there at Belfast.
You know, some very fine riders over there that never came to him. Wilkie Heron was a really fast, a little bit dangerous. But,
Carter was pretty good too.
yeah, he had that
There's a little bit of character.
Rensport.
No, Ren Max. Name me a handful of riders that were considerably better riders than Ricardo. Raymond Spence.
Oh, here it is.
Raymond Spence. In fact, if you look at their performance on very ordinary privately owned machines in the Northwest against noted English riders, you get some idea of how good they were. Ralph had to work hard to get riding. Raymond Spence, there was later a man called Dick Creek. We didn't know how to look after the machine, he had no idea, he bought one up Bob Anderson's. And you know, he'd arrived at the meeting with no battery, and the battery flat. It was coil ignition.
Secretary?
You know that wasn't Ralph from Liverpool?
Huh?
Brinson, wasn't he from Liverpool?
Yeah. He used to wear the lifer bird as an emblem on his helmet. then the joke at the time against Ralph was, doesn't it give you any problems like tapping over your gobble? Yeah, I like the bird. You know, it's a mythical bird, the live bird. That's where Liverpool gets its name. It's an either an extinct or maybe purely mythical bird that inhabited the pool that was once there. I tell you who was a steady rider, but not top class. He'd do pretty well in the island was Bill McCosh from Ballymena. Another one was very good in the days that G45 was the alternative to a 500 main. It was Bobby Ferguson, a farmer from Combra, near Newton Ards on the Ards Peninsula.
Is there any coffee in there?
I'm getting it. Griff, what do you want in your coffee?
Just milk, please.
Okay. Oh, you're supposed to keep it in your mouth.
If you take Tommy Robb, Ralph Bryans, as being the Irish riders that came over and had success to work teams, I'll name you half a dozen riders who are on an equal machine with Cleveland, Stone Cold. Spence definitely would. Either of those, definitely. Much, much better than either of those riders. I'll tell you who was a good man who was killed. He was going quite well on the continent, Austin Carson. Armstrong was a good, consistent rider, but not absolutely top ranked. He was fortunate, very wealthy family.
Yeah, I just was going to mention that. It had a lot to do with opportunity.
Indeed. I'd say that in sheer talent, Dick Creef probably had as much potential as anyone who came out of Ireland since Stanley Wood. He came from Bush Mills, home of the famous whiskey. And Raymond Spence and Wilkie Heron were in that top class. They'd beat Alistair Kane, easily mounted. And they'd make Bob Mack or or Freddie Neville or Bob Anderson or any of those people work really hard. And until he got to be worse, when he was just riding Northerns, they were able, on occasion, places like the Northwest or UGP, to finish ahead of Reed, till Reed got up to the top rank.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hated that field so beautiful, like you can't talk. But this too shall pass.